some of it may just be the software, some of it may just be his system, but I think we all experience that slow one segment. At least we've observed.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good to know. I was looking at the same Grafana dashboard and testing suite that Brad had stood up and was able to reproduce on one of our nodes. And I looked generally across the network, and there was maybe 2 or 3 other orchestrators that were having that on a consistent basis, but most of them were pretty good. So it's definitely something we're addressing by like just doing a disk clone from our good machine. But yeah, it'd be interesting to know exactly why that happens. It's got to be some kind of NVIDIA thing. And we've tried a lot of different things. We have NVIDIA persistent mode turned on, and other things where it's like in P0, it idles in P0 power miser. None of that seems to help. It helps a tiny bit, but it's still unusually high.
Are you saying you have 2 different machines, and on one machine you notice it, on a different machine you don't? I'm just trying
That's
to understand.
correct. Yeah, that's
I got
correct.
it.
Yep. These are both
But they,
combined
but no,
OT.
but no matter what, the first stream still, our first segment still takes longer than like subsequent segments. It's just you're noticing it higher first segment on one versus the other. Is that the issue?
Generally speaking, yeah. On the one that's running pretty good, maybe the first transcode is about 200 milliseconds, and then it settles around 70 or 100. Whereas on the really slow machine, we would do like 770 milliseconds when it should be, closer to the 200.
And just out of curiosity, after that segment, how does it perform? Same, or is it still slower?
Now that I haven't really thought much about that, I think it's pretty much the same. I haven't noticed anything unusual. I'll have to take a look to see if it's marginally slower. It
And
might
what
be 100
GPUs on this
milliseconds
system?
fine.
Is there a different card
That's
between the 2
true.
systems?
They are, yeah. So the really great one's running 1080s, and the slow one's running 1070s.
Wow. A 10 series versus a 10 series. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, those tend to run very similar. I mean, there's differences, but it's not like if you were running a 20 and a 10 versus each other.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If it was 2 totally different series of cards, there might be some difference in behavior, but they're the same series.
Yeah, and they, yeah, it's interesting, and so I'll have to do some more. One of the differences is that the one that's slow is an Ubuntu server, and then the one that's fast was actually Ubuntu desktop that had the UI stripped off it. I don't know if that has any difference involved with it at all either, but
You would expect the desktop
version to be the other way.
slow.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I would have
Absolutely.
expected.
Things are all turned around. But just adding to that RPC issue, I had seen before. That's one reason why we always try to run our own ARB node, was because we did seemed like when we ran our own ARB node, things did perform a bit better. So it's an interesting finding. We'll save most of that for when Brad gets here. But yeah, if anyone, I saw some posts in the Discord that were looking at changing that the cutoff time for that first segment or something. It sounded like other people were experiencing that first segment slowness too. So just wanted to see if anyone else had input or had been troubleshooting that as well.
No, I mean, when Brad first put that dashboard up, I spent some time going through, like, I'd pick some random orchestrators and just kind of look through them and see. And I noticed it pretty much across the board that first segment just takes longer. I didn't get specific to like, oh, this one's taking like this percent longer than the other orchestrators are for their first segment. So I didn't get that deep into it, but it was pretty consistent from what I saw that it was noticeably longer for that first segment, just across the board.
Titan, maybe we can get somebody from the core dev team to come on and talk about the type of activity that occurs in that first segment. Like, what is Livepeer software doing differently in the first segment versus the second segment? Like, maybe somebody can elaborate on the type of work that goes on in that first segment. If it's an RPC call, a get work request, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, what are the things that it's doing there in that first request that adds that extra time to it.
Yeah.
Rafal would
Yeah.
probably be a good person if we could get him, because I've heard him mention that that first segment takes longer. Just from I don't remember the exact term he used, but something about like like I don't know, spin up, start up, something like that, or some kind of like something that about basically just getting that first getting the stream ready in that first segment.
Maybe there's a way to run the Livepeer bench with like enhanced logging and see if that's creating similar results. 'Cause it's got less moving parts to it. I hadn't thought about trying that.
Yeah, but if it's doing less, that means you'll see different numbers, right? You want really something that can exercise the entire workflow for that first segment.
True.
So if there's, if there's multiple calls going on, you don't want to just check out transcode. I mean, it would be good information to know because you could see how much the benchmark's taking and see how much the first segment's taking. Maybe there's some correlation there.
Yeah, I tend to think it's really the NVIDIA drivers. In this case, it's just a lot more time, and it seems like you're saying, every first segment's a little bit slower. When it gets to like 700 milliseconds to start the first segment, you add the download time of 400 or so, and you get to well over 1 second.
Well, the one thing to make note is as well, if you look at your GPU drivers, you have to actually look at the very specific version number because, NVIDIA has a
Yeah,
variety of hot fixes that come out every, week or two, right? Like I think,
true.
maybe about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, they released another patch. So, and if you look at their release notes, there tends to be a lot of things that if you were to go through those defects, like memory leaks and, performance buffering issues, like, just compare your driver version, and I mean not just the base version, like all the way down to all the dots. Make sure that you're running the same software, that nothing's different, because that definitely will have an impact.
Another thing that we looked at that reminds me was the NVIDIA DRM mode set. If anyone's ever heard of this, it has to do with basically setting Linux kernel where it cannot unload the driver, where it keeps it loaded all the time. I think it's very similar to the persistent mode, but just more of a kernel parameter. I noticed a very interesting effect on that slow system, and I imagine it might have been on any system like this too, but it happened to be plugged into a very large television screen through HDMI. And when we turned on NVIDIA DRM mode set, CPU went to like 26% and just sat there for hours. And when the HDMI was unhooked, that dropped back down to like 0, like where it should have been. So it's really interesting.
You said that was the CPU that went up, shot up when you did
CPU,
that?
yeah, CPU
Yeah,
usage, yeah, went way up and NVIDIA DRM mode set is something we have turned on with our good working transcoder. So it's one of those settings we were trying to move over to make sure everything was identical. And when it turned on, notice CPU just went really high. And it wasn't until the monitor was unplugged that it got in order.
But still didn't fix the issue.
Didn't
Yeah,
you
it still
report,
didn't change it.
John? Didn't
Yeah.
you report something similar before when you were saying in your home lab or your whatever nodes you were running that if you had the graphics attached to the NVIDIA card that you were seeing similar problems? I recall you saying only until you disconnected the monitor. Maybe I forget. It was a while ago. You had mentioned something similar where this is when
Yeah.
you were doing your persistent mode research, I thought.
Yeah, long ago. I think it was because we had GDM desktop, and it was the old desktop, Ubuntu desktop system, and we would just turn off GDM to save some GPU memory, and then noticed a pattern that sometimes when we did that, it would actually drop streams, would like drop all the streams on the system, and the way around that was to turn on NVIDIA persistent mode with NVIDIA SMI -P. And all it does is there's just something unique about the Linux NVIDIA driver where it can unload the driver if something stops running. So if you like multiple processes using that GPU and one of them stops, it seems like it's possible that it can just unload everything out of memory.
And I think that's something that you would expect if your graphics card is used for display, right? Because, somebody closes their laptop lid or their display goes to sleep. You don't want to just sit there tying up that GPU resources when those things happen. So it may be desktop related. I run headless. There's no graphics on any of my nodes, so I don't really get to see that kind of behavior.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how our main node is now. So yeah, it's definitely interesting behavior, but we'd be able to fix it with that type of thing, with the persistent mode. And I think that
Well,
NVIDIA DRM mode set's similar.
the only other thing I was going to advise would be if you can get the NVIDIA GPU exporter. There's NVIDIA has, an endpoint that you can run on the server that will export all your GPU metrics, and then you can throw it up in a Grafana dashboard. So I run that as well, and again, I keep a close eye on the resources being used on that GPU. Maybe you can find some correlation with your Livepeer logs and your system logs and use that GPU data to help troubleshoot.
That would be helpful. Does anyone have any links to, I've seen it's like a newer
I
version
do.
of the NVIDIA exporter where you can see like the decoder usage and so on.
Yeah, I have all that stuff running. I can shoot some links out here in a minute.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I think ours is a little outdated. We've just got basic memory usage.
Yeah, there's a whole set of flags and switches that you can turn on for different types of metrics. So I'll shoot a link out that has that. I spent quite a bit of time over the last 6 months perfecting that monitoring stuff with the GPU, especially as I was running in Kubernetes. There's a lot of capabilities in Kubernetes that can kind of tap into that. So I'd spent a lot of time in that rabbit hole.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, I see we've got some other people that have joined us. We got Brad and Fairies. Actually, before we move on to a couple more topics, Brad, do you want to introduce yourself and a topic? Are you with us, Brad? Are you with us, Brad? Oh, he will be shortly, I'm sure. Varies, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Hey, hi all. Yeah, I'm running the version Innovators.eth orchestrator since more than 4.5 years. No specific topic, just curious about this RPC delay that you mentioned, Titan. Yeah.
Very good. Cool. We're going to jump into that topic, especially Brad's here. But before we do that, I want to give a bit of time for Sohib, who has joined us today as a new member of the community. So I would like to introduce Sohib a little bit. We've been DMing back and forth. He reached out because he's interested in building a project on top of Livepeer, or at least getting involved somehow. And I originally had an idea for a demand-side project a number of months ago. And I even got a reply from Doug saying, yes, this is a great idea. I can't believe it hasn't been created yet. He thought that this idea would have been one of the first use cases for Livepeer. And so, Sohib, are you with us? I want to confirm that you're here. I see you've unmuted yourself, but I can't hear you. But what I'll do is I'll continue on with this idea, and hopefully you're listening along, because I know you're interested in this. Because Sohib was interested in developing something on Livepeer, and the concept is simply just a tool for resizing video online. So if you can imagine, there's actually quite a few tools out there that do resizing. So you can go in. Typically, they're limited to 1 gigabyte of video for free. You know, you can literally just Google resize video, and there's like 5 ads for people that want to offer this service. The first gigabyte is usually free, and anything beyond that, you have to buy a subscription, typically of $25 a month, which we all know, like, you're not actually going to use it that much, or if you did, if you have a 2.5 gigabyte video, it becomes impossible to to reduce the size of the video unless you're paying for a subscription, or you're downloading some tool that does that, or something, right? So there seems to be a lot of demand for this online option, and I thought this would be a good use case for Livepeer. And so whether it just be like JavaScript front end, or even using WebAssembly style, programs like maybe like PyScript, you could kind of build out a tool that could do this, where you just connect wallet and you would pay per gigabyte of video that you want to transcode, right? So you can upload a 10 gigabyte video and it would be, 50 cents, 75 cents. You connect wallet, pay your deposit, and away it goes. It goes into the Livepeer network, and you pay for what you use, right? So Soheeb was interested in maybe talking about this idea and creating like a plan around it, and maybe applying for a grant, whether it be through the community grants node or through the retroactive grants through the Innovators DAO. So I'll pause there. And Soheeb, do you have any questions about this type of project, or does the community have any input on this type of project?
I was gonna just throw in that if it was like a one-time use kind of thing for someone, they could upload the file and you would know exactly how much to charge them, so they don't have to like do a deposit and a return kind of thing. If you just like be like, oh, it's this much per gigabyte, or however you factor it. I think it'd probably be a big turnoff for people to like have to like put up money and then try and request it back. I think it's already going to be challenging enough to get people to, Web3 users that are looking for, small amounts of video transcoding. Just the whole wallet issue. We take it for granted. We're used to using MetaMask and all that stuff, but I think that if you can take out that extra step of like kind of putting down a deposit versus like, here's what it's going to cost you, just
calculate that though.
You can calculate that
well,
in the JavaScript, like in the browser.
Yeah, like how big is the file, and
Mhm.
like either upload it or
Yeah,
I think having to put a deposit down is probably going to
it doesn't need to be a deposit. No, there's
Yeah.
no deposit.
Oh, you mean like calculate a fixed cost for the job and say give them an
Yeah.
exact number that they're going to pay?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
that's
mean,
Interesting.
that's
okay.
in the idea. The idea would be that would all
Okay.
be I believe the browser can, when you go to upload a file, your browser can determine how big the file is. You can just ask the OS for that, can it?
Yes.
So you don't even need to upload it or do a deposit. You can literally just select the file and say, I want to transcode this, and right in the browser it can calculate how much that'll cost. And
Okay, I only brought that up because I thought you said put a deposit or something like that.
No.
So I was like, yeah, okay, all right.
No, you could just
ignore what I just said. Then.
No worries. You could literally just like go, hey, I got this 10 gigabyte video. You select it, and it's like, hey, here's your estimated cost of 50 cents. Connect to wallet, pay the fee, and click upload, right? And then you download whatever version you want, right? Now, I understand there's like a hurdle behind, getting users, getting people equipped with Web3, like all these things. But I think that it's just like it's just a Web3 tool that like is novel and could be used, right?
Well, you could still have a Web 2 way, right? You enter your credit card for the payment, you get paid, and then when you get that money, you have a wallet that the operator of the app has a wallet that does all the Livepeer stuff, and they just use the fiat currency to keep that wallet funded. So you could extract that away, but
You're going to spend almost as much in probably credit card processing fees as the transcode costs, but
Yeah.
Perhaps, yeah, that's true. But if you get enough work, if you get enough customers paying for the service, it's probably going to be worth it.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I know in the past I've looked for tools to either convert the format of a video or to trim or edit a video. And it's like a minefield dealing with like, application. There's like free this and free that, and there's ads and mailing lists and viruses. It's hard to find a good program to do stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of demand for this, and it's a good idea. The idea of working with pure JavaScript on the front end is also really great, but I don't know of any implementations that we have today that work natively with the Livepeer network without any server in between to do that. And I'm also thinking about kind of like what Xenon did with their message queue system, where it's breaking it down into segments, so we're not sending one orchestrator a gig or anything.
I think this dovetails nicely, John, with your idea of the broadcaster in the browser, right? Where the broadcaster in the browser is the one sending it to the Livepeer network, and you can do that in the browser. So this can be a very interesting project.
Well, I think like already, I know Python has a Livepeer implementation, and so like something like I don't know much about PyScript, but like PyScript is you have the ability to import packages right into the browser now, so you could just like import the Livepeer package and go from there, right? And maybe it would use Livepeer Inc., but that's fine because just send it off to Livepeer Inc. and deal with it, and maybe pay like just to throw something together, not to get too technical, but maybe just someone holds the wallet for the payments, and every month they go in and convert some of the payments into credit card and just pay Livepeer Inc., right? Like but what it is this like on a front end user experience, what you're getting is you get to transcode your video without having to sign up for anything, or without having to, like, for me, I would actually be more trusting of a Wallet Connect application than I would a free one with ads, because I'd be like, this is probably loaded with viruses and adware and all this stuff. Whereas like, hey, here's how much it costs, here's Connect Wallet, you pay for what you use, and you think, wow, and I don't have to sign up to a $25 a month subscription, like, and like, there's very few Web3 users that are going to do it, but I think there's also pretty low maintenance on this type of thing, and so, that's the idea behind it, is just like, use Livepeer for the one thing it does, which is resizing and adjusting bit rates. So, people actually want that service in and of itself, just for their own personal videos. And what great way to do it at 10x cheaper with no subscription, no strings attached. You get payments, don't enter your credit card, just through the internet,
Yeah, I love this idea. It definitely could run off Livepeer Studio. I wouldn't see a problem doing that. Is there a video on demand interface yet for Livepeer Studio that we can use with the API?
Yeah, they have all that. The studio stuff would be sufficient to do this use case.
And you just take the payments, and I mean, Livepeer Studio already gives you 1,000 free minutes. So even the first like iteration of it, like if there's not much adoption, like that's fine. You just do the calculation in the browser, send it off to Livepeer Studio, download it from Livepeer Studio, and you've got a Web3 video, manipulation tool. So
I would like a link to that PyScript Livepeer implementation. I said that's interesting.
It's not. It's just a Python Livepeer implementation, but from my understanding, in PyScript you can import any module. Just takes a while. I don't know. I've been playing around with PyScript. It takes a while to load the original browser, but once it's up, like, it's basically just Python converted into JavaScript and totally serverless. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that could be pretty quick to put together. It's a very great idea. Just as a sort of a separate project or something, I might be able to integrate with it.
So this was the idea I had for Sohib, and I think he would probably actually get funding if he wanted it. And I know Suhaib's down in the audience now, but yeah, just an idea, and I think it would be well received. It's demand side, probably earn some income from it, and yeah, that was the idea. So if anyone has an idea or wants to talk about this a little further, then yeah, I'll definitely bring it up in the maybe general chat or something, and I'll tag Sohib or anyone that wants to jump in on this idea. Okay. With that being said, we have Brad here. Brad, are you with us? Is your microphone working?
Hey. I switched off the computer. It's working now. I still don't know why the mic wasn't working on the computer.
Yes, the old turn it off and turn it on thing. Okay, cool.
I left, came back, changed devices. It still didn't work, so I gave up.
Okay.
Might need to throw the computer away at this point.
Okay, so we were originally talking about this RPC response time into get orc. So we did talk about it a little bit, but now that you're here, we can talk about it a little bit more. So I don't want to repeat myself too much, but Brad, do you want to?
You can just pick up where you were.
Okay, so where we left off, I quickly
information
explained what the issue was this idea that the get orc response includes the RPC time to the L1 block, but we just discovered, like just before this water cooler, actually, that it's actually the block expiration of the L1 that it's trying to update, or something like this. Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about how you figured out it was this, and kind of like where you see this issue? Because I think this is an issue worth solving. The reason being is if you Livepeer Inc. likely, especially on busy servers, doesn't have this issue because they're sending out get orc requests less than every 2 minutes, and so therefore, which I don't quite understand, because doesn't it still have to ask the L for the layer 1? Like, Brad, I don't understand why if you do it before 2 minutes, it's still fast. But if you do it outside of 2 minutes, it all of a sudden randomly slows down. Is it still not asking the RPC for that information?
Well, it's got to reopen the connection because it times out after 2 minutes.
I don't think I have a definitive answer yet. But to back up, like how this came up is your node wasn't showing up in the selection tests on my broadcaster, and we looked at that a little bit more, and we kind of found out with another feature I added to the selection test to pull an orchestrator info request that your node was responding really slow, like beyond 500 milliseconds, which is the standard pool building time. And from there, we kind of went down this rabbit hole of RPC. Is it the FRPC response? And you've tested a number of them, and it seems like it could be something to do with that, although I'm not entirely sure yet. We're still trying to hone in exactly where it is. But where we're at now is initially it was the price, getting the price info. And then you added back the auto adjust price, so it skips that part and just returns your base price. We saw the time it took to generate a orchestrator info request shift to the ticket parameters part. And the ticket parameters expire in 10 L1 blocks. And that's hard coded into Go Livepeer. I found it finally. That expires then. So every time you get past that expiration block, it has to go back and get new ticket parameters based on a new Ethereum block. And that's where we're at right now, trying to figure out exactly where that is. From what I can tell, these are going into time managers, gas price monitors, that from looking quickly is not calling out to the RPC, but I've never really looked too far into these parts of the Go Livepeer.
So
hope that helped. Probably just confused everybody more, but just lay the foundation.
So I've posted in the chat the Marcos Grafana dashboard for those who haven't seen it, of your response times from his nodes. So if you right now, I just have selected authority null. Or no, wait, who is this for? I think I just picked Brad. or Ad Astra, right? So I just picked Brad's node so you can take as an example. And like he shouldn't be getting these times. Like, and what you'll notice is if you look at his Leiden one, he'll be like 463 milliseconds, and then it randomly drops to like 99, 86, and then it spikes up to like 700 and 400. Like the cutoff time is 500, right? So like what's really weird is like these numbers, like he shouldn't have them that high, right? And if you scroll down, you can look at your node compared to everyone else's nodes. And the response times are just like really bad in general, like 400 milliseconds for places that are just not that far. And it turns out that if you wait more than 2 minutes, your latency is dependent on your RPC node, not your actual distance to the broadcaster node. Okay. So again, this is not an issue for like Livepeer Inc.'s broadcaster node in New York, Chicago, London probably doesn't have these issues because they're sending out a get org request to everyone probably within every 2 minutes because they're getting a new stream every 2 minutes. Although that might not be the case. Like, you know, maybe Prague doesn't send out a get, like, does it actually get a stream every 2 minutes? Like, what happens if it goes 5 minutes without a new stream? Then everyone resets to this extremely long ping time that is totally dependent on the RPC provider of each node, right? So,
well, look at Vires. I mean, Vires, is your F nodes local or really close to your orchestrators? Because like your average time is 94 milliseconds, so you're like the gold standard.
I just run my Orbitum RPC in Frankfurt, I think, and from
Okay.
there just basic connect from all over the world to it. So
And
what I did,
and Marcos is probably, I would bet Marcos is, I don't know how far, if he's going region by region on this, but if he's not, I'm guessing he's hitting your Frankfurt or your EU one.
where is Leiden?
What
Right.
I think Leiden's
That's EU. That's the
it's
Netherlands. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's happening is Vary's node is in is in EU. His RPC is running is not clogged up because he's running his own. Is that correct? Vary's?
So there is different regions. Like I just look at Las Vegas and Vary's is at 530 or 431 on average compared to Leiden. Sorry to cut you off, Titan.
Yeah, so
Well, that's because his RPC in Las Vegas is communicating with the EU.
No, that one's probably getting geolocated to his New York node. And then his New York node
No, the RPC, he says his RPC only runs in one region in the EU.
Right, but his New York node has to go back to the EU to get the request to go back to the new, like, this is what I mean, like, it varies. You only have one RPC for your like New York and your EU nodes, right?
yeah, exactly. Like I think like 10 hours ago, I switched my Las Vegas node to the public Arbitrum RPC to see if it changes anything, because yeah, like the response time from Las Vegas is like really slow. Yeah, so curious if I see any improvements, but I mean, it's a public RPC, so maybe that's clocked as well.
Yeah, I just
changed it 10 hours ago. It doesn't look like there's much difference at all. I'm just looking here.
I think it went down a little bit.
Yeah, but the public node is not fast. Like,
yeah, that public node is going to get hammered by the public. So I think, you know, you're going to get it's available, it's up, but it's probably going to get hammered sometimes.
Like,
yeah,
the public node is not fast. I'll tell you that much. In fact, it spikes up so badly that like some people just end up with this like really red like look at my, if you look at my what is it, my statistics for Leiden, if you look at Titan nodes, it's like all over the map. and yet like I'm just using like it doesn't make sense that it's just so crazy. But that's because I'm using an RPC that is just getting jam blocked with like people spamming it. And so yeah. Anyway, you can see how if a so Livepeer Inc. is probably sending out enough work in places like New York where it's not having this issue as much. But in other smaller areas like Singapore and Sao Paulo, you don't get streams that often. And if anyone wants to come in and use the public network, imagine like there's a node right beside them that's within 8 milliseconds, and they go to ping them, and they respond in a second because their RPC is really far away. They're not going to get into the selection algorithm, and so it's like what gets you into the selection algorithm is actually nothing to do with location. It is all to do with how fast your RPC is, right?
That's the theory we're working on. I'd like to hone in exactly like what steps. I'm just going to add more log
That
lines.
just seems really
have you
bad
rebuild
as a
Titan.
protocol. Sorry, Brad. It just seems like a bad idea from a protocol perspective that your RPC provider is going to dictate whether a good performing work is slow. Like, I don't know if that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it sounds like that needs to be added to the block polling routine, so in some way that stays up to date.
Right, like we should be handing off this ETH1 block data to the block polling interval, and then therefore you'll never have to, like, it'll just be constantly ready to hand back a response without having to query the RPC node.
What is it pulling from L1? Does anyone know?
We don't know that yet. I mean, it looks like it's that. So like where exactly it's getting that info and pulling it, I haven't
But
figured
how
out
can
yet.
it be L1 though? Because no one's connecting an L1 provider.
Arbitrum still has L1 block info.
Oh, right. It's going to pull the L1 block data from the Arbitrum endpoint.
Yeah, it's
I
just
see.
pulling the number. It's not pulling
I got
anything
you.
else.
Yeah, it's not communicating with ETH chain. It's the Arbitrum's data, but it's L1 data. I got you.
Yeah, so yeah, I switched to this endpoint. My whole pool got all wonky. I switched to Mike's node consistently, a lot less. But it needs to be like a lot less. Like the only
It shouldn't factor in.
It's yeah,
because every other step takes like 1 millisecond to make in the orchestrator info request. Once you get past the eth call or whatever it's doing,
it makes the entire information to send back within less than a millisecond, and like so. But the only anomaly here, which I cannot figure out, is actually Video Miner and Marco, because their nodes all respond as if it's not calling the L1 block unless he's running his own Arbitrum node on the exact same server.
He's not. No,
no, he isn't. He's running a public RPC, Arbitrum RPC. I was on the same goose chase that you've been in before, to be honest. I tried to find the reasons, and I tried to match my config exactly the same with Marco's on the same server. From the server that
you're on the same server, and you had like 200 millisecond difference, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot figure out why Marco and Video Miner in Singapore have like 16 millisecond response times across the board all day long. Yet my node is in Singapore too, and if I refresh it, it's like 16 milliseconds. But if I wait 2 minutes, my RPC jumps up to like 700, right? It's just terrible. Once I moved to Zodapps, it was 350 milliseconds every time. So he clearly doesn't have a clogged RPC with like randoms jamming it. So it's like way more reliable and fast. But the fact of the matter is it's still spending 350 milliseconds querying that out of Singapore.
Well, here it'll twist your head a little bit more. Video miners using Zode RPC as well, so that'll make you feel good.
Yes, but
Yeah, Mike, like video miners 20, you're like 400.
Yeah.
Can you explain that one?
so
I believe me, I can't. I'm speechless right now.
it's not the RPC that's the problem, though. It's the node is refreshing its data before it expires. Like the orc is refreshing it, so it's not relying on the time to go to, because the idea is orchestrators shouldn't have to worry about how slow or performant their RPC is. Just like straight up, like the orc node should continue to like operate really smoothly, even if there's a second delay to the RPC node. Because as we all know, like RPC nodes, ETH, like all this stuff is like super unpredictable. And so the orc node should just have no reliance whatsoever on that into its performance at all. So before the 2 minutes is up, it should be refreshing an auth token ready to hand off immediately.
Right. What we're saying is the fetching of any blockchain data should happen with that block polar, where it's going to go collect everything, put it into a local data store, and then whenever stream requests come in, it's going to use the local data you have. It's not going to make RPC calls. And again, I think we all were under the assumption that was true. So I think this might just be a defect that we need to file.
There we go. Yeah, I think this is like a pretty big kind of miss of like this only came up because of introspection. This only came up because of Brad's tool and like Marco's tool and like this idea that we want more information from the broadcaster, right? I'm happy it's happening, but I think
yeah, when you're blind, it's hard to see, man. I think the introspection tool opened the eyes to a lot of the under the cover stuff happening, and I think this is where we need to be if we're gonna get this thing better.
Yeah,
I'm still having a hard time believing it's just an RPC issue though, because that video miners getting these great response times in Singapore. That's actually sharing the same node that Authority Null uses down there. So, and they're using the same RPC.
Yeah, right. But the problem is we literally have tested it on Brad's test request, and it literally says expiration block, and as soon as that block passes, you press it again, and it's slow. So
right, but it still doesn't make sense that like you're talking the same hardware, same RPC, and machines are getting different scores. So there's got to be something else to it too. What are you using for your block polling? I mean, everyone kind of just general. Is anyone using values other than default?
I think I've used 10 for a while. I think the default's 5, if I remember right.
I went with default after they started rolling
I'm at
out
20
batches.
Varies. What are you using for block polling? You know?
I'm using the default.
Default. I forgot what that
What
is.
version of the software are you guys running? I'm running the version 0.60, in which they made some improvements to block polling. That's why I'm running at 20. So that's my little tidbit.
Anyway, none of us are here are, I think, core developers, so it's tough for us to. But I think it's worth diving into like fixing this, because I think as soon as we want to do jobs outside of areas with high demand or areas with really reliable high uptime RPCs, like say we want to go down to South Africa and someone wants to spin up a B or an O, it's like all of a sudden they become highly dependent on the nearest RPC provider, which might not be anywhere near them and it affects their selection algorithm, which like doesn't make any sense. So I think it needs to be fixed. Is it the RPC provider? Is it the logic? Like maybe there's like this like infinite loop that like, or like this like loop that like breaks if it's like trying to renew an expired block, and that's the problem, or like who knows. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth investigating.
You might need to loosen, the expiration parameters on things, and that can impact. Like, I don't adjust my price for transaction cost, but some people do. I can see on my tool. So you'd have to be okay with possibly more variation in that, right? But there's still a lot of investigation to do on that.
Even just expanding the block parameter doesn't help, because when you restart your O node, when you hit it the first time, it's still also slow. So like there's this problem where like if you're in Singapore and you restart your O, the first GET request is just going to be bombed. Like that's just like really unnecessary. And it reminds me of actually the logic of how we used to have the selection algorithm was the first 8 O's to respond got into the working set. And now I realize that the first 8 was largely dependent on how fast you responded because your RPC provider. So distance, like the theory they had around distance for the first algorithm, like was completely broken. Like distance to the node had nothing to do with your response time. It was all about RPC. Which I find fascinating. Whereas they changed it now, anyone under 500 milliseconds just gets in. But again, if you're not within 500 milliseconds, then you also won't get in. Which, again, is totally dependent on your RPC provider. So anyway, I think Brad and I are going to keep doing some testing. Brad, do you have any prospects on where we're going to head next for testing?
Well, I think we should add just log lines on the ticket parameters generation, because it's easy enough to skip the price. We could add it on both, but we have found that before we skip the auto adjust price part of the price info calculation, the time to generate was on that step. But when you skip that, it basically takes no time to get it, because it's just doing a lookup to a map, and then the time ends up on the ticket parameters, and then every other step is basically negligible, 1 millisecond to get to the end. So I just say we stick with the ticket parameters, and I'll add log lines at every step and a timer at every step again, and you'll recompile and run all the tests.
I like it. So yeah, once we kind of figure out a pinpoint
exactly
and
Mike,
what it is.
He's using 0.60. I pulled the latest master, added some log lines, and he just recompiled from there.
I just saw in the release notes for 0.6 that there were some enhancements made to the way they were block polling. So I figured if that's probably, that might be the defect too. I don't know, but I don't think everyone's running.
I don't think so, because Titan, you were
using,
I
don't think so either.
0.38 before when we kind of found all this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
And if you use Marco's tool as your benchmark, I'm since he released that tool, that's pretty much the way most orchestrators have looked, which always to me it didn't make sense. So I kind of gave up on that, because I was like, I don't know, this doesn't seem to be matching up with the performance I'm seeing just based on my orchestrator and other ones. So I kind of didn't put a lot of faith in that, but maybe I just was missing something. My point is that I don't think anything's changed as far as in the newest release to make that either better or worse. I don't think they broke anything.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, I don't think anything's broken. I think this has been a problem since day one, and it just hasn't been addressed because we haven't had the insight.
Yeah, no, hard to. Yeah, like Mike said, hard to see when you're blind. Just keep walking in the dark.
Bumping your head. That's right.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we've gone over that topic a lot. Does anyone else have any comments on the response delay or RPC times? Cool. Yeah, work in progress. And hopefully we'll get to the end of it and improve it and then move on. Another topic we had was from Mike about Quic protocol. And Mike, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it wasn't really my topic. I just saw that there was some conversation in the Livepeer forum asking about Quic protocol, and again, it's different. It's a bit technical as well, but there's some performance and throughput. There's a lot of different improvements that Quic protocol has made, which is basically the alternative to like TCP/IP. So everyone has a TCP/IP. They're running their nodes on HTTP. Quic is just another layer in between that just makes that networking transport a lot easier. So I think there was a proof of concept done by Livepeer that, toyed around with the protocol just to see if it worked. And I think that, as Marco pointed out in the chat, that they ran into some challenges and that he thought it might be a good topic for, I forget who he mentioned that was authoring the proof of concept, that they'd come to the water cooler chat and just kind of talk about what they were doing. And I think Flo was the one actually that asked about the protocol stuff, but maybe I'm wrong.
Who is in charge? Who is doing the testing? Do you know?
Marco had mentioned.
I think it was Thul.
Yeah, I think it might have been that Thul as well. I wasn't sure, but again, maybe we could reach out to him and see if he'd be willing to come in and talk about what he was doing and what he found, and if there a future for this in Livepeer or not.
Yeah, we haven't had Thul in a while. I think it might be good to reach out to him.
I mean, there's definitely if you look at networking on the, since the start of the internet, there have been some changes, but like this is the first time like a massive change was made that really does address some performance concerns from the protocols that were built in the 60s and 70s, right? So these things haven't changed. So there's something new that came out, probably in the last year or two, couple of years, that really has been taken off and getting a lot of traction. So I think folks are going to start asking about it because, again, if there's ways to decrease latency and improve the throughput, I'm pretty sure Livestream is going to be an area where that might take off.
There we go. Well, I'll write it down, and we'll see. I'll aim to get either Rafal or Thul on to talk about some topics, more technical topics around certain things. Flo, did you want to comment at all on that topic?
No, he said already everything.
Very good. Cool. Awesome. I'll move on to another topic, which I didn't bring into my introduction, but it is a good one, which is the Livepeer Innovators DAO. So for those that are applied and are in it, or at least we haven't quite finalized everything yet, applications are still open. So if you want to apply, please find the link. Otherwise, the logo contest is in its voting stage. So if you haven't done so already, head over to the app and vote on your favorite logo. So I think it ends pretty soon, in a day or two. Let me just double check. And let's see, voting open. Closes in 2 days. 2 days, 21 hours. So yeah, head in there and vote. And let's have some fun and see if we can come up with a nice little logo. And once we get that done, we can we can do our inaugural vote, start the DAO, and yeah, maybe be the first applicant to the Delta proposal that is happening, which is, I guess, Doug just mentioned that it is in its review stage. So that's really cool. Does anyone else have any questions about the Innovators DAO or the Delta proposal? Cool. Well, yeah, we're just trucking along, and hopefully we can continue to build platforms where people can get funded for building projects on top of Livepeer. So, yeah, pretty excited for this transition into these public goods funding. Okay. Do we have any other topics that we want to cover?
I have a topic.
Yes, go ahead.
I just thought about it. Did you see in the Livepeer chat where one of the developers had mentioned they were playing around with some FFmpeg flags and they're trying to improve quality of video streams? They were talking about, potentially having the need to install like this CUDA SDK. Are you aware of that conversation in the Livepeer chat?
I quickly glossed over it, but does someone else have any more context around it or want to add to it?
Or post it if they can find it. I'm horrible at Discord, but I briefly remember seeing it as we were chatting here about, there was some work being done. I'm just curious more about what that kind of work is, what they're doing, and what the impacts might mean on for orchestrators. But I just wanted to raise awareness.
Yeah, that I can. This is another reason to get Rafal in, because he was the one that proposed it. I'm just looking for the where he started it, but here it is. So we could maybe knock out 2 issues with one person if we can get him in, because he also was the one that did the update for 0.6.0 with the RPC changes.
Block polling, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, so he seems like the guy that we want a lot of answers from, but I don't have any other comments on this other than just reading through it.
Well, I mean, again, the one thing just to, that I take away from it is that he was asking if they're going to get better quality, they may need to install additional software on the host system. So they were asking if, adding this kind of dependency would be some sort of burden for orchestrators. I didn't think so, but again, we have folks always having problems getting patches and drivers installed, and now you want some more NVIDIA software installed. I don't know if that's going to help that burden at all, but I mean, that's just one, general takeaway.
As long as the improvement is significant enough to affect the end user, then yeah, like I think we really still need to compete on quality of video as a network. Yeah,
I agree. I think having that software is good to have. If they're taking advantage of the software at their hand to get the best quality out of the performance they have now, the system resources they have, it's a good thing.
Because I'm looking at like Twitch. I go on Twitch every once in a while, and like the video coming through is phenomenal. Like it's really fast, really high quality. Like we definitely need to be at that level if we can,
I just know that's something that a lot of these folks here that chat here talk about. And I wanted to make sure because I miss a lot of stuff in Discord. It's only on a rare occasion do I find something like that.
There we go.
Oh.
All right. Does anyone else have any other topics to cover?
I actually got a question. Maybe someone else dealt with it before. Has anyone used a Safe Global multi-sign wallet and built transaction to stake on Livepeer?
Can you repeat that? I didn't quite get it.
Right. Has anyone used a multi-sign wallet called Safe.Global?
Safe.Global?
Yeah.
No.
And yeah,
I
so
mean,
basically,
we use that
in,
for video miner, but we've never. I mean, we don't do
yeah,
any staking through that.
yeah. So I was just playing around and trying to work out how to build a transaction to stake to Livepeer network. It was just complicated, and it needed a JSON and contract address and everything else. So I thought maybe someone else did it before, knows how to do it.
Well, if you need help with like the smart contract, JSON, and the address stuff, I can help you with that part. I've never used that tool before, but you know, together we might be able to figure it out.
I will say the safe global thing is like, because I believe this is the this decentralized safe that DAOs use, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Adding a function for this to stake would be huge.
Yeah, so there is a transaction builder. You can build your own transaction. So we're just playing around and trying to work out how it works. So
Absolutely.
probably me and Zoop gonna have a chat about it.
That's a really good idea. I think giving DAOs the opportunity to stake their Livepeer tokens would be a good idea. Because I believe just the nature of the multi-sig, you would need to have a custom transaction using safe. You wouldn't be able to do it with the transactions that that are publicly available, because you need the multi-sig factor.
In all the fairness, the Tenderize app is supported by it already.
Hmm. Yes, that's if you want to use Tenderize.
Yeah, so I just wanted to look into the Livepeer, and I thought that would be a great addition for everyone.
Yeah, well, let's build out a transaction. I might look into it a little bit here, but why don't you get to where you get stuck, and then post in the orchestrator chat like what you need, and we can all hop in and give you the resources. Unless this is not something you want to take on, or you want to, like, someone else
No.
maybe do it.
I don't mind giving a go. It's something interesting and learning experience, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you run into a spot, like, just post maybe a link to the exact kind of spot you're at and what information you need, and we can come in and provide some guidance if we can. Because I think when you create this contract, is it like publicly available somewhere in like a safe dictionary of things people have made, or do you have to like publish this yourself and we'll have to like put it in our docs?
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that, to be honest.
Okay, cool. Well, we support
We'll
you.
unpack it. I'm sure it's going to be on the blockchain. I'm sure there's some smart contract folks can interact with if they wanted to use it, but we'll dig in. It sounds interesting.
Very cool. I like it. I like it a lot. Great. Any more topics?
One idea I wanted to throw out. So I've been playing around with this device called the Rock 5B. It's like a embedded ARM device, and there's a project called Ethereum on ARM, and they have a really interesting image that you can run. So if anyone's looking at building like an ARB node type, server just dedicated, that might be a really good platform to look at. I was able to get one synced up with a 4 gig NVMe, 4 terabyte NVMe hooked to it, and it's amazing that you can run, Ethereum, a validator, and Arbitrum all in one device that's that small. So.
Can you post the link to the resource in the chat? I'd be interested in looking at that. I think you did mention that to me once before.
Yeah, I'll find that and post it. It was really neat. I do recommend like copying over, your Geth database or something to make it a little faster. And it definitely needs like active cooling because it'll shut off pretty quickly. But but it's definitely handling fine. It's not used in production. It's just for calling rewards. So I haven't really experimented with all that, but it's great if you're doing development because a lot of these hosted RPCs, as we were talking about earlier, kind of slow and they take a while to sync up. When you're running something like this, it's almost instantaneous when you boot up a orchestrator or broadcaster node. It's really helpful for development if you're testing like that. And I'll post a link to that.
Cool. Thank you.
Some people have even taken these and apparently you could run them in like a cluster. So you can imagine you could fit like 4 of these on a 1U rack if you really wanted to, scale an RPC service, kind of like Zodap. And you could run these in like a high availability cluster and it would apparently fit on a 1U. It's very efficient.
Yeah, definitely. We're looking to scale up significantly, and I think those are definitely ideas that we're, looking at. So thank you.
Cool. All right. Any more topics?
I could circle back to the one we were talking about, the latency.
Yeah.
There is a call out to the broadcaster to get like the max flow, which has to do with the tickets. So I think that basically calls out to find that their reserve. I think that's the only cache thing I can see, because then it's cached after that. But I added a bunch of log lines, Titan, if you want to pull the changes down and rebuild it.
Yes, I will.
Does it show when
that?
Does it show when the cache is invalidated? Like how long does that cache stick around? I might take a guess and say 2 minutes.
I didn't look, but after there is like a watcher type process that will update max float for senders, and the senders are the broadcasters. So I'm
How much
thinking
do you want to bet
once
2
it's
minutes
set,
is in there?
well,
The default.
could be. It could
Well, based on what you guys are seeing, it looks like 2 minutes is the magic number.
How do I
We'll
pull?
see. You just need to pull it. You need to fetch it and pull it down again.
Get fetch and then get pull?
I think so. That's what I usually do.
Get fetch, get pull. It says
you gotta specify the remote.
What's the remote in the branch?
Yeah, you gotta type in the branch
get pull
name.
Which is it number 2? AV public log lines -2?
No.
Just AV orc info log lines?
Yeah. That should be it.
It does not appear to have a Git repository. What?
I'll type it in for you in our chat.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do that not in this water cooler, but yeah, no, we'll definitely git fet origin. Oh, okay, there we go. Oops. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we'll keep diving into this, and I'm really curious as to how we can fix this so that it works quickly and fast for everyone, and even if an orchestrator has small stake in an area where, or even, it doesn't even matter the stake, it just matters that the amount of streams coming into the B. If 2 minutes go by without a stream coming in, everyone resets to how fast their RPC is. So like, that's not, I mean, in the middle of the night, like, we don't always get a stream every 2 minutes, right? So yeah, I think this is a pretty big update we need to fix.
I have a question on this. Brad, did you change anything on your test server to send a request out more often than the streams now? Because I just tested mine a few times and I was waiting like over the 2 minutes after the most recent test. And in New York, I'm getting like between 3 and 6 milliseconds. Like it is what it's showing when I do a send request. And before I was getting like 128 if I would wait like the 2 minutes. or in the low 100s.
Oh, I think he left.
I was going to say, or maybe I'm not looking at that screen, and maybe Brad's not here anymore.
What was the question?
But
did he update how many streams come through?
No, did he update is it sending like a get orchestrator request without doing a stream?
That's
because
right.
I'm now testing.
Every 5
did
minutes,
update
he
that?
does a stream, and it just does the orc request at the beginning of the stream.
Right, because like when I was testing this over the weekend when you posted about it, and if I would wait the 2 minutes after, like a little over 2 minutes after the test stream, it would be like in the 100, low 100 milliseconds for the request. I'm doing it now, waiting that same amount of time, and they're coming in between 3 and 6 milliseconds. So I was just wondering if there's an extra something in there that's making the request, or if it's making an orchestrator request without actually sending a stream out.
No, so when it sends
I don't
the
know
stream,
why. Yeah.
If it sends the stream, then for the 2 minutes following that stream, then
You're still good.
You're still good. And if you refresh it within the 2 minutes, it updates so that you have to wait another 2 minutes from the refresh.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So like the stream comes through, and then there's 5 minutes to go till the next one.
Yeah.
So go then again at like 2 minutes to go. So it's been like 3
well,
minutes.
It's not technically 2 minutes. It's technically how many blocks. So if you wait 4 minutes, you should be in the clear. Or 3 minutes.
To get well, that's what I'm saying. I'm waiting 3 minutes. I mean, I can wait 4 and try it again, but in the past when I was waiting it would get down to 2 minutes to go, so 3 minutes waiting, I was getting that longer request of like 100 and whatever milliseconds.
If you just go to Ether, so when you hit, like right when it does the test stream, if you just hit, or at least when it just finishes the test stream, you can hit your request, and it'll tell you when the block expiration number is, and then you can go to Etherscan and just keep hitting refresh until that block passes, and then when you hit refresh, it'll jump up.
Got it.
So yeah, you can literally just manually look when the block passes, and then just hit refresh, and you can recreate the first query, the first response.
Yeah, it's just interesting that it's working differently now than, I mean, I tested it quite a bit over the weekend after reading your stuff, and it's pretty consistent, so I just don't know what changed, but I can play around with it later.
Yeah. I wouldn't go based on time. I would go based on the blocks, so that it's like you should be able to recreate it pretty easy.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we've gone through most of the topics today. I see in chat we have Chris asking a question. What does anyone think about the idea of a UI where orchestrators can observe what content goes through their node? Does anyone else wonder what's in this video we're all processing? Chris, that's an excellent question.
I would not think that most people would want their content to be viewable by the orchestrators. I know that technically it is, but I don't know about making it easier to do.
Good point. Yeah, I would wonder if we would want the opposite. If we would want to make sure that there's no way that an orchestrator could view the details. Because imagine you're doing a stream where, well, I don't know how this would work, but maybe it's a private stream, a paid stream, but yet the orchestrator could easily just like watch what you're streaming them for free and totally circumvent, the infrastructure side can just totally leak your content that is supposed to be paid content, right?
That would be my thinking. I think that would be more of a hindrance to adoption than it would be a positive.
I mean, I'm sure like Amazon can clearly see what you're streaming, but there's
Yeah, but you have
really
a contract with them and things like that, so
yeah,
it's different.
but they're not gonna be like wanting to leak or want to like be nefarious with your stuff. Like they have a reputation and things. But on a public network, I think that's actually you. I don't know if you want to enable that feature. In fact, I think you would want to really try to say, "Hey, we're such a secure network. Not even the orchestrator or transcoder know what they're dealing with."
Yeah, that's how I've thought about it too, especially in the case of video conferencing, which I mean, I know Huddle is a good example. Um, I don't even know how they deal with that on their platform, but it's a really important, I think, to perhaps even secure it.
I agree. I had actually mentioned one time that for like VOD stuff where it doesn't need to be, real time, that for security, it would probably be better to actually rotate the segments through different orchestrators so that you can't put it together and have the entire stream.
Really
It's a
interesting
very
idea.
crude way of doing. It's a crude way because, it's got to be decoded at some point. So there's always going to be the ability to at least get a frame or a segment. But I mean, unless you get into some real specific, I think, hardware stuff that might be built to work around that. But I mean, there's FTK put a tool out that allows you to like peek into what you're watching, and it's not to watch the video, but you can pull frame.
Yeah, and I do think, I mean, regarding content moderation, that generally would be handled on the broadcaster side. Maybe there's a use case for the broadcaster to be able to, monitor what's going on with their node. And that's interesting in the context of Catalyst, which I have to be careful because I don't really know much about to speak on. But one idea I've had for a while is like if the Go Livepeer application could have a little HTTP UI that would make it so a broadcaster could, use that to test with and to check current settings, you see what streams are active and that kind of a thing. So that Livepeer for a broadcaster, their experience is more than just a command line. It's like you kind of have an admin interface for it. That could serve as like a demo, making it easier to get going. But I think Catalyst provides a lot of that. So there's even an idea about like creating a Docker image, where you can have your Catalyst and your Go Livepeer and all its dependencies together, making that more available.
Chris, what if you can't chat, and could you type in like what would be other than just curiosity, what would be a use case for this? To, make sure you're not. Would it be like to you're typing? I'll let you type. Yeah, that would be was my guess, but I don't know that we want to put that on the orchestrator.
What's he saying?
For censorship, so that we have as orchestrators have something about giving actors in the network also some level of censorship control.
Right.
Because right now he's saying we don't have a choice.
Yeah, I know that's come up before. I know Poppy even mentioned too, like, how do we know that there's not some illegal content being broadcast? And there is a question of control or even liability. And as I understand, at least here in the States, it's like about who's hosting the content, which would technically be on the broadcaster side. Not aware of any regulations around processing, but
I think there
something to
are some.
consider.
I mean, I'm definitely not an expert there, but I think there is something that goes along with what you're saying, John. That Otherwise, anyone who's network your stuff goes through at any point is going to be liable for content that goes through. Like, I mean, whether it's your ISP or at any point in the game, it puts a lot of people, responsibility on a lot of people to have to censor stuff. So I think it really is on the. I've heard, I don't remember the exact wording that was used, but it's something along with what you were saying, that it's really more who's hosting it, be responsible for it.
Right. There's even Communication Decency Act that's around not being responsible for things other people post, but at the same time having to comply with the takedown notice.
Right.
So it
exactly.
kind of has more to do with the hosting of it. It's a good topic because, I mean, I think in general people look at Livepeer as something that provides perhaps some censorship resistance. I know that there's a lot of pieces missing from the stack to get a fully working solution, and that's actually been a lot of my goals in the project is providing a full stack of censorship resistant streaming. So kind of interesting to see where the lines are drawn there.
Chris is saying censorship resistant is different from uncensorable.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I use the word, because it's practically impossible to make something proof. But it's a very good architectural discussion. Yeah.
Chris says, thanks for being my mouthpiece, guys. Don't have a voice today. That's okay, Chris. We're glad you're here. Yeah, this is an interesting topic. Don't know. I feel like there's lots of different implications that could be positive or negative by being an open network. Some could be, the idea of being able to promote, process, or otherwise run certain type of algorithms on content. But I feel like that can be done anyway with any Web 2 company. So if there's an opportunity to exploit or promote video while it's being processed, I think Web 2 already probably does a good job of that. I think Web 3 has the problem of you could inevitably leak anything that gets processed by your transcoder. So, public video is the best use case for Livepeer potentially. Whereas private video probably is much harder to justify because it can be leaked so much easier. But hey, maybe there's maybe it doesn't have to be that less secure. Maybe there can be some way of determining whether something was leaked and you could get slashed for leaking the video or something like this. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting.
We're still trying to work out how to slash for just doing poor transcoding, let alone figuring out where something was leaked from. I think we're a little ways off from that, but goals, right?
I mean, yeah, we don't even have slashing enabled, let alone we still are calling RPC nodes for, like, we have a 500-second delay in our stream simply because we're asking L1 for data. Like, it's just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, half a second delay just because blockchain is involved. Like, that's like unnecessary. Cool. Okay, well, again, we'll open it up. Any last topics? All right, I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. I do appreciate your time and effort and trying to make Livepeer the world's open video infrastructure. Thank you for the good topics, and we will continue going on with next week's water cooler. I'll try and get Rafal or Thol on here. I think they would be great guests coming up. So yeah, I got a couple other people I'm trying to reach out to, but not getting much response. So, but yeah, we'll go from there. And happy building, and we'll see you all next week. Cheers.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.